Welcome to this Professional Learning Network meeting. My name is Father Tom Simonds. I'm the Director of School Engagement at National Catholic Educational Association. We planned on having this be a live meeting, and there were about 8 people that were able to join us for the live meeting, but due to a few technical problems, many people had problems logging into the PLN meeting, and so I'm recording the presentation that I gave so that you'll be able to watch it on your own time as an on-demand webinar. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and here you can see the little visual that I used for our Professional Learning Network meeting. Today we're talking about being the spiritual leader of your school, and I've been at a number of meetings over the years when I was teaching in teacher and leader preparation at Creighton University. I would go to meetings, diocesan meetings, or meetings of meetings at NCEA, like the NCEA convention or the Catholic Leadership Summit. And I heard a number of principals and presidents say that they really didn't feel comfortable being the spiritual leader of their school. They were very comfortable being the academic leader or being the chief educational officer, but they didn't have that comfortability with being a spiritual leader. And obviously, as we have come into a new era in Catholic education where lay people are being called to be both the spiritual leader and the academic leader of the institution, we need to find ways for everybody in Catholic schools to feel comfortable living out their baptismal call to be a disciple of Jesus and to be able to share that with others. And if you're in a principal president model school, obviously the president, who has an outward facing role, is going to have some pieces of that spiritual leadership component, maybe praying in a situation of loss, or praying at an event celebrating something in the community, or praying at a milestone during the school where there's a lot of stakeholders gathered. And the principal has that faith leadership role or spiritual leadership role within the community, within the school itself. So leading a prayer service, doing a lot of things that lay people can do according to the rubrics of the church, like giving out ashes on Ash Wednesday, for example, or giving a reflection outside of Mass. So if you have a prayer service or a Lenten Ash Wednesday service that's not a Mass, lay people can give a reflection and do some of those sacramental, not sacraments, but sacramental type of things. And the church has published books about guidelines, rubrics on how lay people would do that sort of thing. But at the very basic level, we're just talking about being comfortable leading your leadership team in prayer, whether that's a short prayer at the beginning of a meeting, or whether you're leading a day of recollection for your leadership team, or even leading a day of recollection for your entire school faculty. We want to help you be ready to do that. I remember when I was on the board at Creighton Preparatory School in Omaha, Nebraska, we were hiring a new president, and we're looking at hiring a lay president. And one of the things we did, they had their interviews with all the different constituencies, and it's quite a jog through all the different groups in one day. But at the end of each day, we would have the candidate come in for a meal with us, who were on the hiring committee, interview committee, and we'd ask the person, would you please lead us in prayer? And if the person's going to be the president of a Catholic high school or any Catholic school, or the principal of a school, I think it's reasonable to assess, are they able to lead a group in prayer? And I think that's a skill that people should have, but sometimes we don't feel comfortable in that role just because we haven't done it before. And so the goal of this Professional Learning Network meeting was simply for people to talk about their own experiences and how they got comfortable or are getting comfortable in that spiritual leadership role. And the meeting we had today, where a few people were able to join me, I think 8 people, people talked about, going to meetings like with their superintendent, or going on a retreat and learning how to do a guided meditation, or their superintendent, leading day of recollection for the principals of the diocese or the school district or the school system, and then having people come back, the principal coming back to the school then and then replicating what they had just experienced. And it really went well, according to the people that were sharing in our meeting today, that was a really good way for them to learn how to lead as a spiritual leader, how to lead faculty and staff in a day of recollection. So that's an example of the kind of things opportunities you can look for. What are some ways that I can seek out opportunities like that for my own spiritual engagement, my own spiritual growth, where I could learn a particular strategy like guided meditation, for example, and bring that back to my school and use that with my leadership team, with my faculty. So I've divided this short presentation up into two parts: your personal goals for spiritual leadership and your leadership team's goals for spiritual leadership. And you can see that on the visual here on the screen. I'm just going to focus on your personal goals for spiritual leadership. You can look over the team goals for spiritual leadership. NCEA can make available this document, so you can click on those links. But the spiritual works of mercy and the corporal works of mercy are pretty basic Catholic lists of Catholic things that we can do, different ways that we can serve others. So you should be able to find those pretty easily if you Google them, but I'm sure we can share the document so you can click on those as well. But really it starts with your own personal spiritual development. And so how can you develop a way to have a regular prayer practice every day? I always do mine in the morning. I recently went to a physical therapist to get some therapy for a little injury I had. And she said, now I'm going to teach you these different stretches, these different strengthening exercises, but they're only going to work if you do them. And I was like, well, that's easy. I'll do them in the morning, because just like prayer, if you don't do it in the morning, it doesn't get done. And she was like, yeah, I like to hear that. And for me, I know that if I don't take that 30 minutes of prayer in the morning, later in the day, I'll go to mass and I'll reflect a little bit after mass if I have the opportunity to do that. But if I don't get that time in the morning, I've learned over the years that it isn't going to happen for me. And so that's my prayer time in the morning, after I get up and get ready. And then before I eat breakfast and come into the office, I do prayer. But whatever time during the day works for you, I suggest the morning is often a good time. But some people do find that the middle of the day or the end of the day can be a good time as well. The challenge with the end of the day is we can be tired and fall asleep. But you want to get a regular time during the day, and you want to have some sort of a spiritual practice that you engage in. I give you an example there, reading the daily readings of the Mass. There's all these little pamphlets. I use Living with Christ, but there's Breaking Bread, and there's all these little pamphlets you can get a subscription to that they give you the daily Mass readings for the Catholic Mass every day. What I do is I read through those, just takes a couple of minutes, but then I take, some time to close my eyes and ask myself the question, what do these readings say to me? How would I apply them in my own life? And that's where I think it really has meaning. And, as a priest, then I can use that for my daily homily. I can use it if I'm asked to do a prayer to start a meeting. And as a layperson, as a leader of a school, you can do the same thing. Once you've read those Mass readings and you've thought through how they apply to your life, you can integrate that in things you write, in speeches you give, in talks you give, in situations where you're sharing something with students. Like yesterday, I remember the Mass reading was, to let your light shine before people and to not keep it covered up. And so that's an easy metaphor that you can use with people. Like, I really noticed that you have a lot of spiritual gifts. How can you share those with others? How can you let your light shine, as Jesus says? And so you can find all those little ways to apply each day the kind of insights that you've gained during your own personal prayer period. Secondly, you want to talk about the charism of your school. A charism is the spirit-inspired way that your school uniquely educates children and youth to become adult leaders in the world and the church, and to become, hopefully, disciples of Jesus. And Jesuit schools are famous for having mottos like Men for Others or AMDG, Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, to do everything for the greater glory of God. At Creighton Prep, where I was for a time in Omaha as a teacher and then as a board member, we would talk about boys becoming men for others. And so you have that concept of growth, a boy becoming a man. And you also have a piece of Jesus's teaching in there, a man for others, somebody who cares about others, and being other-centered and caring for our neighbor is a big part of Jesus's message. Not certainly the only part, but it is one part of it. And then there was a mercy school in Omaha that I was familiar with, and their statement to their students was that mercy girls become women of mercy. And I haven't been there in several years. I still remember it because, again, it has that idea that a girl becomes a woman. There's a growth process that you want to happen in your school in terms of in terms of intellectual development, human development, and formation. But there's also a spiritual growth that happens, that a girl becomes a woman of mercy, a woman who cares for others, who is merciful like Jesus was merciful. And so whatever you have in your school that's like that, that talks about growth over time, and that talks about how that growth over time is made unique and different in a spiritual way, that's your charism, and you can identify that. And once you've identified it, you can use it. You can have your students write AMDG at the top of your paper, for example. You can have students talk about how they've been a woman for mercy or a man for others. Whatever your charism is, you can integrate that into so many different ways. And as a leader, you can integrate it into when you talk to people, the words you use, how you frame what you do at the school. Talking about the charism of your school can be a really good way for you to begin to like crystallize, what does it mean for me to be the spiritual leader of this school, and how do I verbalize that, and how do I walk that walk with the people at my school. It means planning more than just starting a meeting with prayer. It means being able to lead a day of recollection or a day of reflection for your faculty and staff. And that might sound a little daunting, but you can do it if you just find an opportunity, maybe to go to a retreat house or talk to some of your peers or colleagues and say, hey, where could I go to learn how to do this, and learn how to do a guided meditation, or learn how to do a day of recollection. And once you've seen somebody else do it and you've gone through it yourself as an educator, probably as a former teacher, you know how to learn things and then share them with others. And so that's a good way to just, slowly build up your tool belt of spiritual strategies, spiritual skills, spiritual techniques that you can share with others. I really like this quote from 1 Timothy that I have here that I'm highlighting. It's used by St. Ignatius in the spiritual exercises. The concept of spiritual exercises, I would guess he probably took it from this line from Timothy, from Paul's letter to Timothy, but I haven't seen anybody document that. But I wouldn't be surprised if he based it on this, because they're very similar ideas. St. Ignatius was the founder of the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits, and I'm a member of that religious order in the Catholic Church. And so the idea is that you engage in spiritual exercises in order to seek personal holiness, in order to save your own soul, in order to grow in grace before God and men. And then by doing that, you also will help other people save their souls in the way that you model yourself, and in the way you interact with each other. And Paul says the same thing. He says athletes run the race, they punish their bodies, they work hard for men. We just think of the Olympics, how people work years and years, and only every 4 years they get to go and compete, and they do all of that to win, as St. Paul says, a crown of fading glory, a crown of laurel wreath, or something like that, a gold medal. When you bite it, it's hard, but you can't take it with you beyond the grave. And so if people work that hard for something like that, how much harder should we work for the gift of eternal life, for the thing that will be with us without fail for never and ever? And that's Paul's point. It's Ignatius's point. I think it's a good way to think about your own personal growth. You may go to the gym While you're at the gym, maybe you could pray, or maybe you have gym time and prayer time, but it's just the same kind of thing. You want to do a spiritual workout, you also want to do a physical workout. And then you have your leadership team's goals for spiritual leadership, and I'll let you read those, look through those during the PLN meeting today. We just talked about the first part, and then people shared a little bit about how they've become comfortable being and thinking of themselves as a spiritual leader. And I shared a couple examples of how they did that. We really didn't get into the second part. So I'll just leave that for you to read that. Again, I apologize that we didn't get the links to you so that you could join us live, but I hope that this on-demand recording of the PLN session will be helpful for you. Thank you and God bless. And our next PLN meeting is October 30th, and there'll be an opportunity for you to sign up for that. So hopefully you can do that.